Hi everyone, I'm Dave and this is Corin from Do3 and we are here to talk about hand paddles. Okay, so what are hand paddles? What are they all about? What are they for? Well, first of all, they're for a multitude of reasons. Mostly they're used for improving the quality of your stroke and improving your strength. We'll go through the different types towards the end of the video to go into a few more specifics in terms of that, but they're effectively training aids to help you improve your strength and to improve actually where your hands track in the water sometimes too. How do you use them?
It depends which type you've got. So there are all sorts of different types of paddles, which we're going to talk about a little bit in a minute. But so depending on which type you have, depends on how you fit. These Finnish ones we use quite a bit in squad. They're very simply, you just put your thumb through and it's the pressure of the water that holds it in place. If you find that the paddle sort of moves around as you're swimming, it probably means that you're not getting an even amount of pressure on the bottom of the paddle. So that's it's giving you some feedback about your stroke. Another one that gives you a bit of feedback is this one. They're just some of them have elastic loops. Just put your finger through the one loop. You don't hold on to the side of the paddle. They deliberately just have one loop because again we'll talk about how we use them in a minute, but just putting one finger through gives you feedback about your stroke. Others have double straps, one for your wrist, one for your fingers, and some have straps that go round your hands as well as over your fingers. So there are all sorts of different ones, which we will have a look at in a minute.
Okay, I think we'll cover different types now actually, because it probably makes sense than going on to the next one at this point. So different types. Well, first of all, what should we start with? We'll start with this is called a Finnish freestyler paddle. As you can see, it's quite a different shape to some of the other ones. It's obviously a pointy shape, and the big difference with this one is it has a keel on the bottom there. I don't know if you can see that. But basically, as Corin says, you put your middle finger through the strap on there. And because it only has one strap, the idea with this paddle is when you put your hand in at the front of the stroke, if the hand isn't tracking straight, then of course the water will start to twist the paddle. All right. So if your hand comes in at an angle, then you'll feel the paddle move on your finger. I hope that kind of makes sense. So again, if you go in straight, then the paddle will stay straight because the keel is nice and straight, and the paddle will be nice and happy. And you'll be able to feel it move anything other than that. So we use this a lot for alignment drills. So for hand entry and also drills like kicking on the side to make sure that your lead arm is out nice and straight in front of you. So that's that kind of paddle.
So going to the normal Finnish paddle. You can see with this paddle, hopefully you can see, it's slightly curved in its shape. So what that's to do is to encourage you to just go a little bit deeper and get that hand down as you go in at the front of your stroke, to try and stop you landing too flat or even coming up at the front. So as you recover over the top, you spear in, and that will encourage that first part of the catch where your fingertips come down before your forearm. As I said, it will move around if you're not getting a nice even pressure through the catch and pull through, and it will fall off. So like the freestyler, it'll give you some feedback as to how you're catching the water.
Okay, so there's three here which are quite similar in that they are all flat. So perfectly flat paddles. The only difference between these really is the size, which I'll talk about next. Clearly we've got little tiny ones, and we've got some kind of dinner plate or dustbin lid size ones, which some mainly guys like to swim with because they like big paddles. So the idea of this really is that when you start off with paddles, the best thing to do is to have a paddle which is just a little bit bigger than your hand. Okay, so if you have a paddle which is too big, when you start to use the paddle, if you haven't got the strength to get over the top of the stroke and catch the water and pull it back, then what will happen is, because you're not strong enough to do that, is you will start to slide out and you'll have a weak and sloppy catch at the front of the stroke, and we don't want to be drilling that in. So you start off with a small paddle, and then you move up to, say, a medium-sized paddle, and you keep going, and if needs be, then they can get really quite big. So you can really get hold of a lot of water and really work on the technique and the strength part of your stroke. Okay, we like these paddles. I like these paddles for a lot of swimmers because they are perfectly flat and actually allow you to spear in the water forwards, but also slice in the water sideways. Some people have a tendency to slice in a little bit sideways at the front of the stroke, which sometimes is okay. So flat paddles, particularly like, and different sizes. Make sure you get the right size.
So as Dave was saying, the ones that we tend to use mostly are the completely flat ones that allow for different kinds of stroke. Quite often you'll see these kind which are curved all the way around, which they do allow you to get hold of the water at the front of the stroke, but if you tend to slice in from the side, they'll tend to cause you to over rotate or to rotate your arm inwards more. So we don't recommend these ones quite so much. We prefer the flat ones or the Finnis. I can't remember which ones.
Agility paddles.
Agility paddles. So rather have those ones, and say they give a little bit of feedback with your stroke, which these ones don't so much.
Okay, so again, try and make sure you get the right paddle for whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. Again, if you're not sure, either ask your local coach or drop us a message, and we'll try and advise you the best we can. The main thing really is that you don't use too big paddles and don't do too much paddle work too soon. Kind of try and think, particularly with this type of paddle, and not so much this is like a pure technique paddle. With the kind of more like the technique stroke power paddles or the flat ones, then you need to kind of, it's a bit, think of it like doing a little kind of mini weights workout with your swim. All right, so you wouldn't start with a huge, massive weight right from the start. You start with a small one and build up, and stay in control of that stroke. It's really important. Just to finish off then, how often do you use them? Well, again, when you're starting and you're using it for kind of making sure you're getting hold of the water nicely and a kind of almost like a strength element of the session, then you need to use them fairly infrequently. Don't use them too often at the beginning, and slowly build up how often you use them. But don't become completely reliant on them. Some people do use them too frequently because I don't know, it just feels nice. You can get hold of a lot of water, and it is nice to swim with paddles once you get used to them. But it's good to take them off, and obviously you need to try and repeat the motion that you've been doing with the paddle without the paddle on, like full stroke and normal swimming, if that makes sense. So don't use them too frequently and swim with them all the time. You must do some normal swimming too. So go on.
Just make one point. If you find that when you're using paddles that you're getting, you find they're putting a lot of pressure on your shoulder, that probably is telling you something about your stroke as much as anything. If you're pressing down flat in the water with the paddles on, it's putting an awful lot of pressure on the small muscles in your shoulder. So it may be worth having think about whether you're actually getting a good catch and pushing the water back, and using your chest muscles and your back muscles to sort of engage the stroke, rather than just using those small muscles. Because if you've got a paddle on the front there, you're going to put a lot of pressure on those shoulders. So you shouldn't get shoulder pain if you're using it, if you're catching the water correctly. So get your coach to have a look at your stroke a little bit if you're finding that the paddles are putting a lot of pressure on your shoulders.
Okay, I think that's pretty much it. I hope you found that useful. We do have a similar video on pull buoys and fins as well, so have a look out for those if you want similar kind of fairly straightforward advice on those things as well. If you've got any questions, pop them in the questions or the comments box down below, and they'll find their way through to us, and we'll do what we can to answer those for you. But again, I hope you found it useful. If you enjoyed the video then and you want some more tips and things, then feel free to click the subscribe button. But failing that, we'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.